Hello and welcome to Mostly Minnesota Music Podcast Edition. I'm Ann Tracy. I'm here with my co-host,
Heather Baker.
Yes, and I am very excited. We are here today with AJ Isaacson. No, I'm screwing up the easy name. Isaacson-Zvidzwa. Did I do all right with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I am excited to talk to you because of all the stuff that you have done, but also you're someone who kind of rocked 2020, I think. And there aren't that many people who have done that. So kudos to you. You have a show, you were named a Cedar Commission artist, which is amazing. You have a show that's
Correct.
Opening there. The Angels Sang to Me on March 5th, and you got married last year.
I did. I got married December 20th.
Nice. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's just, as I said, it just lifts my heart to know that somebody did well last year and is continuing to do well this year. So tell us about yourself. You are a musician, you are a composer, you're a violinist, but tell us more.
I started my music career as a violist. There was the one viola in a class of 20 violins in a public school, and that's how I started. I play viola and violin. I do composing. I'm also into music history, and I've had a paper published on the Brahms Opus 120 sonatas.
Wow. I have to admit, I don't even have the vocabulary to ask anything about such a paper. That's amazing. How does one go about studying the history of music? How much of it is listening to it and how much of it is the research?
It's a lot of research. It's quite a bit is yet to be done. And so I had a project where I was looking at unpublished viola concertos. And so it was an interesting experience playing through them, not being able to hear what it sounds like first. Because in our age of digital music, when you go to play a piece of music, you listen to different recordings to see how the professionals have done it. But then you go to a piece that hasn't been played since 1800, and you just it's like a direct connection between you and history.
That is amazing. I'm not a musician, so I can't even, I never really thought about that before. That must be like unearthing a new thing every time.
Mm-hmm. It was very exciting.
Well, and it sounds like you do a lot of research because the 19 movement song cycle that you have coming up, you've got a lot of poets and I know Emily Dickinson. So you obviously are a scholar of many flavors.
I think I went through about 1,000 different texts before I came across the 19.
Wow. How could you whittle it down from that many? Or what was the process of whittling it down, I guess?
First of all, it needs to speak to me. And having a piece of poetry that once I read it, I can start getting an idea in my head of how it would musically come together. There's also the length requirement. It can't be too long or too short. And it was just a lot of reading and finding texts that come together and will work together with the rest of them and create a flow throughout the whole thing.
That's amazing. And Emily Dickinson is that, you could read 1,000 of her works alone. I mean, she is so prolific. Who did you find first? Like, what poem did you select first?
There's a poem called Alone I Cannot Be by Emily Dickinson, which sparked this whole project.
And what drew you to that piece?
The way it was written reminded me of what it was like to live with hallucinations.
And I'll ask you to talk a little bit about that and in terms of the art, the work that's coming up, because that is sort of the work that's coming out.
Yes.
That is an amazing and a brave thing to do, to write about something like that? I mean, it sounds like it's as much about the hallucinations, but kind of going through the process of figuring out that you're having hallucinations.
Correct.
And I can't. It must be strange to realize not everybody is seeing what I'm seeing.
The first hallucinations I had were insects. And so I literally had a fly swatter in my bedroom and was trying to like kill the bugs. And it took me about 3 weeks to realize they were in fact hallucinations.
How did you realize? I mean, I just find that to be fascinating.
When you just sort of realize that so many bugs are disappearing before you can actually kill them.
There you go.
And you didn't eat anything or do anything to see those bugs, I'm assuming, too. Can I back up just for a second? Did you already know that you wanted to include the mental health piece in your artistry for the Cedar before?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just didn't know if you came upon that.
The poem by Emily Dickinson sparked my interest in a book by psychologist Kay Redfield Jamison called Touched with Fire, which is a book that explores the link between the manic depressive and the artistic temperament. And so she goes through and lists poets, composers, visual artists, other artists past artists who had mental illness. And so I got my list of musicians from that book. And that's how I figured out whose poems I could use to really delve into living with mental illness.
So the poets that you've chosen have had experienced themselves with some mental illness.
Correct.
Emily Dickinson, mostly remember she's really a fascination with death is what I remember of her poetry, and some of that. So it's that would be another just real connection to that history. And I have a master's degree in literature, so I have read some literature, but it's Irish literature actually. So you can find a few Irish artists that would probably fit along those lines too. But I know there's often a conversation of can mental health be beneficial to somebody who is creative? And
correct.
How do you have views on that? How do you feel about that?
I personally am medicated. I am very unstable when I'm not medicated, and I can't. It's very dangerous for me to be unmedicated. And so it was interesting. In one statistic I found, before medication, 20% of people with bipolar died by suicide. And so in my piece, I'm trying to show that it's possible to be creative while medicated. Because I believe it's very important to stay on medications because of statistics like that.
And I absolutely applaud that. I mean, I think it's, I remember I've heard people say, how could you ever create if you weren't sad and if you were, it's that kind of,
Yeah.
Well, because if you want to write another one, you probably want to,
It was interesting. I was starting to have symptoms when I was in high school, and I used to have what I called my creative episodes, and which was a manic episode. And so I would induce one of those by staying up for several days at a time.
Oh.
Just because I knew if I did that, I could have the most euphoric creative process.
that is a hard way to live.
Yeah.
Because if you need me saying that, but there must be there must be a balance where, how did you come to realize that medication was the way to go?
It took probably about 10 years to get a correct diagnosis. And so I was medicated for the wrong symptoms.
which I imagine does not make make things worse.
Yeah.
So just for folks who are listening, it might be in a similar position. Did you notice things? Did your family notice things? Was it teachers that noticed?
Everybody just thought I was eccentric for quite a while.
Which is exactly what they said about Emily Dickinson.
Yep. So it took having a very severe psychotic episode to finally get a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type.
Okay. And that must have been, a scary thing altogether. If you have an episode, I had a friend who had an episode like that, and how it came to, it was the middle of the underground in London. It's a frightening thing, but then even the diagnosis, were you, by that point, had you been misdiagnosed for other things at that point, or?
I went through quite a few diagnoses, as frequently happens, especially with women.
It's interesting that you should say that. Why do you think, especially with women?
For years, I was diagnosed with a personality disorder.
Okay.
Which is a very frequent misdiagnosis with women, because symptoms appear differently in women than they do in men frequently.
Which is, that obviously unfortunate. So it's, so I think that just gets to the point of your work being so important, to help people recognize that misdiagnosis. I think many things are diagnosed with women, because doctors have never done research with women.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think that's so.
Sorry. I was going to say, when you're playing music or singing or writing poetry, is it sort of therapeutic?
Definitely.
For you too? Okay.
This process was very healing to me, because I delved back into like my darkest days and was like, how can I create an atmosphere which would bring others into what I experienced? And so I have one movement of the song cycle where the soprano is singing and the string quartet is literally just bombarding her with text to give the audience an experience of what it's like to try to listen with hallucinations.
I found that fascinating. I was listening to some, and it's like frantic and fury, and just like, it's too much. But it's such a beautiful way of letting people understand. I just was like, this is genius. I'm so excited for you to be able to share this with people, because it makes it so easy to feel it and understand, or to be able to try to understand it. So I just think it's incredible work.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you're having a few people on stage with you that you worked with in college or played. Were they just like, let us be a part of this journey with you?
I'm actually not performing.
I'm sorry.
Performing. I have Maria Jetty sing soprano, Leslie Shank and Brenda Mickens on violin, Sifi Chang on viola, and Lauren Sewell on cello.
Nice. Now, are they performing live on the 5th?
No. It's pre-recorded.
Okay. Well, it is. We were asking ourselves this earlier, but if you get a ticket, you can watch it for a few days, I'm hoping.
I'm not sure how that works.
Okay. We have an interview at the same time. We were both like, we might have to reschedule.
I know.
I have to say, I don't, I don't listen to a lot of music of this just, you know, it's amazing music, but I've got a few symphonies through orchestras for things like that, but it is amazing. I enjoyed, you did a video on the Dance of the Goblins. So tell us about that, because I love that story.
Oh, okay. I was in 7th grade. My grandpa had just purchased Finale notation software. And so I was like, oh, I'll download that on my computer too. And it was Halloween. I was a dancer at the time and I'd sprained my ankle. And so I couldn't go trick-or-treating. And so I was going to sit down and write a piece of music. And so I wrote, it was for string orchestra, and I called it Dance of the Goblins.
And it's dark. It's dark.
So that was into the psyche of a 7th grade musician.
What's funny is like, when I listen to it, I'm like, yeah, if I had the talent, this is what I've written in 7th grade. I think I remember some holiday like that I couldn't participate for some reason. I think I don't know, scratched or something. So had you had music training to write music before then, or okay?
Well, I started my choir and orchestra conductors were very important in helping me, encouraging me to just compose and compose and compose. And so I was like writing all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was like 7th grade stuff, but I wrote a piece for choir that was premiered at the Kennedy Center when I was in 8th grade.
No.
What?
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, like how old are you? Like all these things that you've done, it's like feel like you should be 130. And you're like, oh, that was all done by when I was 14. Sorry.
The other thing I did, which was a big achievement for me, was I wrote the processional for my high school graduation ceremony.
Wow.
And that was just an amazing experience.
Wow. Did you go to a regular public high school? Did you go to high school that focused on music, or?
I went to a charter school called St. Paul Conservatory for Performing Artists.
Oh, sure. Okay. Nice. So you really were surrounded, and now it sounds like your family must be musical as well if your grandpa's coming home with notation software.
I think the story went, Grandma wanted a new stove and Grandpa wanted the notation software. And she came home from work one day and the stove was out and the software was on the table.
Oh. Talk about singing for your supper. That is. And did Grandpa sleep indoors that night? Because I can't imagine that going well. That's amazing. And now, do your family members must play then? What sort of music do they play?
My grandpa was a trombonist.
Okay.
And he played in like Dixieland bands. And then my uncle is a music theory professor.
Oh,
okay.
Wow.
So.
And I read something that your mom was
Yes. My mom played viola through high school. And she had her old violas sitting around the house. And so I loved when she would get her viola out and I could pluck the strings and play around with it. And so that's why I played the viola, because I wanted to be like my mom. So my first instrument was her first instrument.
And you guys would play together and then you shut up and she's like, enough of that. We're done here.
We played viola duets together until I started getting bored waiting for her to figure out how to play it.
Yeah, like seriously.
Like a 6th grade Mandy was sitting there, Mom, no, that's a flat.
That is amazing. That's what I mean, you clearly have such a gift that was nurtured as well. I mean, it's a combination of the two.
Mm-hmm. I didn't study privately really until I started college.
Okay.
I did take composition lessons when I was in high school. into my first like year of college. I studied with composer Linda Tudis-Haugen, and I would help her in her office doing music stuff in exchange for lessons.
Oh, nice.
And she really helped encourage my composing. And then I took a break for about 8 years to pursue performance and music history. And then as my psychotic episode started when I was in grad school, studying musicology at UW-Madison. And so things just fell apart then. And so I came back home and I ended up on disability and needed something to do with my life because I don't do well when I'm idle. And so I got back into composing then.
Okay. And just composing on your own outside of school, outside of with?
I've studied privately with Randall Davidson.
Okay. Okay. And do you mind me asking how long ago was that?
I think it was 2018.
I thought you were going to say 20 years ago. I was going to say it was not 20 years ago. 2018 makes a lot more sense to me. Like, she has the best skincare I've ever seen. No. 20, so just a handful of years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And you're in Minneapolis now?
Yeah. Woodbury.
Close.
We just moved from Minneapolis.
Close enough. Close enough.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with the Cedar Cultural Center?
Somebody posted on Facebook a call for composers, and I was like, I need a project. And so I applied.
Wow. And the rest is, they say?
Yep.
After your performance on the 5th, do you have other ones through the Cedar that you're gonna kind of do on the same lines, or
I'm working on finding other places to perform Angels Sang to Me.
Okay. I don't think you're gonna have a problem. I think this is, and especially during this time period where I think everybody's mental health is. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I just think it's such a beautiful tool, and to have someone like yourself be so open and sharing and so gifted, like, you are extraordinary.
Thank you.
I do think, yeah, it will be opened many doors to other things too, but I'm excited that it is more than the Cedar too.
Yeah.
The music is moving. I mean, I like the idea of having the instruments making noise here and the vocalist trying to do something else with it, and there must be other techniques that you were able to use. Music is, can bring you back to something so quickly. Mm-hmm. Like music and I think smells, those just can bring you back. So if you can, to let somebody else, well, two things: to let somebody who's never had hallucinations kind of experience, to have a feel of what that's like, but also for anybody who hasn't really recognized it, what that was. Mm-hmm.
And like I said, my first hallucinations were bugs. And so at one point I have the string quartet buzzing.
I love that. That's good.
So they're going zzz, while the soprano's like, what's that?
That's great. I love that technique. It's great. It's great to have that kind of sense of humor about it too. Mm-hmm. I think as therapeutic as it must have been. It must be hard to think back to some of those times too.
Definitely. I went back through and read my old diaries, and
how was that?
That was really tough. To sort of bring myself back where I was when I was really sick.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that gives you even more motivation to stay medicated.
Definitely.
I mean, I think that's, well, and it's this, and again, such a powerful tool to share for other people, because I think that artists do have that issue with, will I lose my creative edge? And obviously you have not.
Mm-hmm. I find myself more productive on medications than I was without them, because I can compose in a much more sort of analytical way, as opposed to just waiting for inspiration to strike me by staying up for 2 days.
Yeah. I do feel like that's a false economy, you know. It's like, seems like a lot might have happened, you know. And I guess I don't know. That's how do you go about doing now? How do you get yourself?
I find myself really enjoying writing for Singer because I have the text to sort of guide me. And so I start with the text and I analyze the text and sort of say it out loud with inflections and sort of get an idea of how I want the melody to sound.
And then, but I think I read where you had said it's interesting to write something and then have other people perform it.
Definitely. It's like sort of birthing a piece of music. You know, you spend time incubating in yourself and then you send it out into the world and let it grow up.
I understand. I that is, yeah. And then once it's grown, do you, how much ability to improv? How much do you want it to be a collaboration? Kind of, is it done? And then are you like, this
It's
is the way
definitely a collaboration with the musicians, and letting them, getting their input on, oh, this tempo's wrong, this note is weird, can we do it this way? You know, what if we do it this? You know, and just sort of bouncing ideas amongst the musicians.
Is that fun, or is that like,
I love it. It really, because I want the piece to be comfortable for musicians to play, because that's the way you get more performances.
That's a good point.
If musicians don't like to play it, it's not going to get performance.
It's a really good point.
So you want your musicians happy. And so that's where the rehearsal process comes in, and they get their say, and that's how it sort of grows up and moves on to its own entity.
Nice. It's funny because I think of somebody finding your work, 100 years from now, the way that you've unearthed some of the music. I just think that's, I love the vision of that, of understanding so much of how that's going, because it is such an amazing work musically, but then really the power of helping people better understand mental illness, I think, is mental health, is amazing. Now, do you think you will kind of continue with that theme of doing music related to mental health? Or
I'm not sure. We'll see what my next project brings me. This piece was it stretched me as an artist to write something of 30 minutes of music, and all exploring mental illness.
Do you feel more connected to this piece than something else that you have done, just because it's, well, I want to say more connected to who you are, but I don't know if that's necessarily true too,
This piece definitely means a lot to me. I put a lot of myself into this piece. The other main piece I wrote was when I was 19. I wrote a string quartet. And I had suffered a trauma a couple years earlier. And so the string quartet, I went through the 5 stages of grief with it. And so that was another piece I wrote that was really personal to me.
Can I ask if there's something that you hope that people walk away with after your performance on the 5th, or envision, or?
That's a good question. The final movement of the song cycle is a poem by Emily Dickinson. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. And that's what I want to set forth, is anything you go through, the suffering, all of it, is to help somebody else.
That's what I have written down in my notes. It's actually that line, because it really, it does speak so well. I think it's, and I think especially now, I know for my own mental health, just during everything that's going on right now, I have to remind myself, if I can help someone else, that will help, that makes all of this worth it. It's,
yeah.
And frankly, talking to somebody who, as I said, did seem to rock 2020, who did so well in 2020, that you have helped me hugely. Because I'm like, I'm glad to see some good stuff is happening. That gives me so much, it just gives me faith that things will keep getting. Yeah, we've had a hard one.
Yeah, definitely.
When did you start writing this?
I think I started it in July of last year.
Of 2020?
Yeah.
Yeah, right in the middle of a lot of stuff happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting with our string quartet is I go into each rehearsal before the musicians get there and get my tape measure out and measure the 6 feet between the musicians to make sure we're properly socially distanced. And I have a full-length shield that goes in front of the soprano so she doesn't have to wear a mask.
Wow. Stuff you didn't imagine doing 4 years ago for your music. Oh, well, I hope that you guys are able to perform it live soon, in front of people. That would be living the dream. But yeah, I could imagine projection of someone with that kind of voice is probably.
Maria's amazing.
That's well, she does. What I've heard of it, she does a nice job. I mean, you must be pleased.
Mm-hmm.
How will you celebrate?
I'm very pleased.
Yeah.
Not sure.
I have to think of some way to celebrate for sure, because this is a lot.
Yeah.
As you said, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of hard work of, so that's amazing. And now you're on the look for more projects.
Yep.
Fantastic. So we'll get the word out. See,
Thank you.
You'll find another Facebook post. I mean, I don't know that much, it's not, you're not, we talk to a lot of musicians where it's just singer-songwriter, and you're just in a whole different, what you do is a whole different animal.
Yeah. It was funny. They sent me a list of things they wanted me to do, and I'm like, I don't even know what's a stage plot and a back line and a and inputs and.
Wow. So you have got. I mean, the process of this now. You're just learning a whole lot more. I mean, not only are you learning how to measure 6 feet. That's fantastic.
Because in the classical world, we're just acoustic instruments, and we just sit down and play.
Yeah. Well, it would be fantastic to see the classical world mix more with, to play places like the Cedar, to play, and there are a million stages in the Twin Cities.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it's well, and I know that the St. Paul Symphony, St. Paul Orchestra,
St. Paul Chamber Orchestra.
The Minnesota Orchestra. And because I know that I've seen somebody play at the Turf Club, brought in a huge piano, and and it was fantastic. You know,
Yeah.
I think giving people the opportunity to hear music like this, because it really fills you up in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask what you've taken away from being part of the artist collective at the Cedar? What it's brought to you or the other artists too?
It's just been nice to work with other artists who are completely different from me. I think classical musicians tend to live in this little bubble where it's just us, and we're kind of snobby when it comes to
It's so refreshing to hear you say that. That's amazing.
So the other one,
I mean, it's hard not to think that when people, you know, you get so dressed up and.
an event.
All right.
But so it's been nice to mix with other artists who are so different from me.
Has that sparked anything to maybe collaborate with some sort of different art that you've seen or person that you've seen or befriended during this process too? Or are you more focused on what you're doing?
I'm more focused on what I'm doing.
Okay. I can see that, but I just didn't know, and I don't know how much you get to interact in this.
We don't have much interaction just because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's been hard to sort of really get to know others.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I just have to applaud. Yeah, I'm so impressed with the Cedar and what they have brought to us. And yeah, I just think it opens up everybody, including the artists. So I'm just so excited for events like this. And hopefully they'll have it online where we can see it after our interview too.
They said it will be archived. And so I think it's 1 month you can purchase that, and then at the end of the month it'll be available on like YouTube.
Okay.
Oh, nice. I like that, especially for any kids. You know, I think of if you had another avenue for folks who might have your talent but not living in such a nurturing. And I don't even mean like it's not but not musically nurturing. Like, God love anyone in my family, my parents or my children, with any musical talent. That would not be, there'd be no nurturing that, you know. We don't have the skill. We don't have the same talent. So I think what a way to introduce kids to a whole new world of music. Awesome.
If you're online, Minnesota Orchestra has young people's concerts. I don't know how old your kids are.
Well, we did go. My youngest one is 16. We don't qualify anymore. But we used to go when they were little. We often went. I loved that. I mean, it was, as I said, it's, you know.
They're doing them online now.
Okay.
My brother has severe disabilities, and so he can't go see concerts, but he's been really enjoying the Minnesota Orchestra virtual concerts.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll have to look those up again. When they were little, we used to go all the time, and it really was. It made a difference. It made a, because you know, one of the things with kids, not only might you not have enough money, you know, suddenly kids are expensive. I don't know if folks know that, but especially when they're very young, you don't want to pay $15 a ticket and then knowing that full well that 10 minutes into it someone might need to go.
Yeah.
You know, I always think that's I applaud the orchestra for doing that. I applaud the museums locally. Usually you can get in for free, because then you can just enjoy it for as long as they can enjoy it.
Yeah.
So but yes, thank you for the shout out for that too. Yeah. Well, we are looking forward to seeing this on March 5th. It's fun. It's fun. As I said, it's not what I listen to 9 to 5, you know, it's just, so it's very fun. But I loved that the Angels That Thanked Me, the portion that I was able to see online. And then, as I said, the dance of the goblins. I'm so, you know, the 7th grade me is so jealous that you had the talent to do that. Cause you know, it's just making the most of, it is so impressive, you know, and makes me, yeah, I'm just excited to see it the March 5th. For folks who are listening, I'll include this in the notes too, but they should go to the Cedar Cultural website to get the tickets. But how can they find you online?
The best is my website,
Okay.
which is ajmnmusic.com.
Nice. And if when you have upcoming events, we'll be able to find those there. But
Correct.
I saw that you had started a vlog. Are you going to do some more of the vlog posts?
You know, I sort of got into it and then I got really sick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't even know what it was. It wasn't COVID, but I had a super high fever and was just run down for like a week or two. And it just sort of put everything behind.
Well, either the vlog will come up to the front burner again or it won't. You have plenty going on without it.
Yeah. But my website is updated frequently.
Okay, awesome.
And so if you want information on Angels Sang to Me, there's a link to where you can purchase music or purchase tickets for the premiere. There's quotations from musicians about their experience playing it. Then I wrote some program notes where I talk about the origins of Angels Sang to Me.
Nice. So perfect. That's where folks can see you, and we can see the whole performance on March 5th.
Correct.
Thank you for taking the time, and it's been a delight to meet you. And so we're looking forward to the performance on March 5th.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, AJ.